Dear colleagues, my name is Stefan König and I work at the University of Education in Weingarten. My co-presenter is Ünal, a former student of our institution. Currently, he is a staff member of a German training center for soccer. First of all, I want to say thank you for getting the opportunity to present our research project on adopting TGfU principles into adolescent high-performance sport, which we conducted in 2021. Today, I want to both give a brief overview about this study and show that we urgently need more sophisticated methods for improving tactical behavior. Our presentation is organized in 3 chapters. First, I will give an introduction to the issue at hand. Then I will describe our explorative study, especially its design, our data management, and of course, some results. Finally, there will be a short summary, including a few recommendations for praxis. Now, let us approach the issue in a short introduction explaining our setting. What I would like to discuss is the situation the German Football Association, and certainly a great deal of other associations too, are in. First, we have to state that there is a permanent international competition which requires a lot of investment into fostering adolescent players. This also brings along the need for a continuous analysis and discussion of the training system and all its components. Second, and with regard to the German football philosophy, tactical competence has gained center stage in this process, which implies that we must elaborate our methods with which we want to improve individual tactical behavior, like tactical intelligence and tactical creativity. If we now hypothesize that both the international competition requires a permanent improving of the training process and we need adequate methods for implementing tactical intelligence in particular, we might conclude the question whether teaching games for understanding is also an appropriate method in adolescents' high-performance soccer. Simultaneously, this corresponds to our superior research question. Based on these introductory deliberations, we pursued the 2 following research goals or questions. Number 1 was: which advantages and disadvantages of TGfU do head coaches of youth squads find out? Number 2, which strengths and weaknesses do young high-performance players appreciate? Of course, these 2 questions also represent the starting point of our explorative study, which I will now present. Let me first give an introduction to our study design. Originally, we wanted to confront players and coaches with a training unit based on the concept of teaching games for understanding, which would have been taught by Chan. Their experiences, estimations, and feelings should have been the basis for guided interviews focusing upon the appreciation of this presented concept afterwards. However, training sessions were closed due to the pandemic, thus we had to follow Plan COVID. Instead of a real field experience, our participants were confronted with a videotaped TGfU training unit and interviewed afterwards. As you can see, our sample consisted of 3 head coaches and 9 players from teams of different ages, that is 12, 14 and 16 years old. In the next step, I report about our data handling. As to data collection, we conducted semi-guided interviews due to their balanced approach as to guiding and openness to the participants. Their length lasted between 30 and 40 minutes in the case of the players, and 45 to 60 minutes with coaches. All interviews were conducted online, which was also due to the pandemic conditions. Focusing data preparation, we used literal transcription into standard German. That is, we avoided dialects and we did not add any comments. Data analysis was realized with qualitative content analysis, following the approach by Udo Kuckart's a method, a procedure which can be described as a rather inductive process. After having finished the study, we are now able to present the following results from the coach's code system. Beforehand, I want to remind you of the research question, which is, which advantages and disadvantages of TGfU do head coaches of youth squads find out? First, and as you can see in this slide, we could develop a code system with three main categories, namely aspects relating to the training system, the process of learning, and the issue of coaching. Second, each of these main categories encompasses some minor categories. Each of them mainly transported a positive estimation, even though some negative aspects came up throughout the discussion. Finally, I want to present two examples of what our participants said. Let me start with the category playing and exercise, which you can see on the left side of this slide. Referring to the idea of playing and exercising, our U12 coach said, well, certainly you should exercise. Drills belong to practice too. But I believe that playing is the more valuable and effective approach for the guys. For us, this was a hint that we need a game-based approach, even in high-performance soccer, but also a reasonable connection of playing and exercising, two issues that TGfU stands for. My second example refers to the category motivation. The U16 coach said that, well, I believe that whenever players are enabled to understand why a drill has an effect for certain situations in the game and can transport that to their own performance, they do it much more easily. They exercise with more awareness and greater passion. This indicates that understanding seems to be crucial for motivation and game appreciation. Again, two core elements of the TGfU concept. Let me now change the perspective and go on with what players said. First of all, you can see that the framework of categories having been displayed in the case of our coaches could be nearly replicated, even if we found a slightly different system of minor categories. Second, and with reference to these differences, one thing was noticeable, namely the issue of reflection, which should be interpreted as a signal that players feel a kind of equivalent in this process of teaching tactical intelligence. Finally, the categories integration and communication, placed on the bottom of this slide, imply that teaching games for understanding might also be seen as a method with which player-coach communication can be enhanced. Again, I want to report two anchor examples. Starting with our subcategory motivation, one of our participating U16 players said, you can see that on the right side, I really do realize the effects of what I have to do. Then I really go the extra mile because I know I need it for the match. For us, this was a hint that understanding things in a game leads to high motivation and effort, which are focal in adolescent high-performance sport. My second example is typical of game understanding or appreciation. The statement, well, I often observe the game and try to read it. Then I can also realize where we performed well and where we have to improve, underlines the positive perception of explicitly understanding what to do, which is also a core component of the TGfU conception. Let me finally summarize my presentation and conclude it with a few implications for praxis. We could observe a great interest among players and coaches in adolescent high-performance soccer, who both attributed a great potential to TGfU in their setting. Furthermore, we realized a rather high readiness to implement TGfU into their process, although we know that there might be a difference between what people know and say and what they really do. The most critical issue for us or for our participants was time management, as our participants were rather apprehensive of losing too much time in a setting where time is definitely restricted. In the end, Charles and I would like to recommend that TGfU should be implemented into the education of coaches in Germany, that there should be more long-range evaluations of this approach, and we definitely need further empirical studies to prove the effects we have found out. Thank you very much for your attention.